Today we're coming back into the heart of the Bella Centre to introduce you to some real activists who are right at the centre of this process. They're not NGOs, they are in fact the small island and poor delegates from different countries around the world. Now, the thing to remember about the small island delegations, and actually the small islands themselves, is that they have next to no responsibility for the problem as it currently stands. And they also have very small economies and have very little financing to deal with the issue as it comes. And actually the small island delegations and countries are the first hit by climate change and the worst hit. They're going to go underwater before 2050 in many cases, and many parts of their islands are already disappearing.
We are talking about our survival. We are arguing very passionately for our people. Whereas some of the developed countries are arguing for economic growth. I don't think there is any comparison, and we get quite insulted quite often when people talk about negotiating, because we cannot be negotiating the future of our people. It's not on the table for negotiation. I think we're just people far away, perhaps to be ignored. I see on the globe that our islands are not even on the globe, so maybe this is a sign, I don't know.
Next, I want to introduce a group of really incredible young people, and they've come out to the negotiations to try and help those small island nations and those without proper resources here at the negotiations. So here we're joined by three of them.
Hello, I'm Kirsty and I'm 25 years old.
I'm Al, I'm 27.
I'm Charlie and I'm 17.
First question I've got is, what are you doing out here and how did you get here?
Okay, we are part of a project called UN Fair Play, which is a very kind of informal gathering of friends from Wales, and we started off by realising the complete inequity of the numbers of people in delegations here, and we looked at the delegations with very few people, and one of them is Kiribati, and so we've been helping them all last week and this week.
And what sort of things have you actually been helping them do?
So mostly Kiribati don't actually have enough people to cover every stream of the negotiations. So for example, there might be 12 streams of negotiation going on at once. They don't have a very big delegation. They actually can't go to all of them. We don't represent them when we're in the meetings, but we report back on what happened, we take minutes, and then we meet up with them regularly and kind of tell them what's been going on in the negotiations.
And how overburdened would you say they were as a delegation from your experiences so far?
I mean, yeah, really enormously overburdened.
There are about 5 separate negotiating sessions going on all at the same time, all incredibly complex and all working with language which dates back about 15 years, right? You have to be a lawyer to understand what the hell is being said and what the hell it means in any of these sessions. Actually, many of the developing countries simply cannot operate under those circumstances.
So when we were at the press conference of the Alliance of Small Island States, you could just see how tired they were, and that's because their spokeswoman, she'd been working all day in the negotiations, and if you've had a day like that, then when you come to do a press conference, you're tired and you probably just want to go to bed, whereas some of the richer countries, they have a whole press team who deal with that kind of thing, and that just means that those countries are much more able to represent their stories and their version of events in the media, and that's an enormously powerful tool in achieving what they want in the negotiations.
I've just come from one of these meetings, and I could stand it for about an hour, but that was it. I just had to leave. And of course, if you do that, then then one of the parties whose position you don't agree with can take your language out, or delete your 350 or your 1.5 or whatever the number is that you're trying to defend.
I was sitting in a session today where lots of the negotiators couldn't actually understand the language that was in the protocol. So some were saying, English isn't my first language, I can't negotiate, I need to wait till my minister or somebody else comes along.
You can just see by the layout of the place. The Americans have got an enormous room about the size of a hall. EU's got a pretty big one. The Maldives has no office at all. We've got a small island developing states office which is about twice the size of this table and is full of people and like that desperately trying to get to use the printer. And it's very difficult to coordinate.
I feel really uncomfortable having this badge, but I don't really think it's our responsibility to feel that, and that the system should be changed and that more people should be allowed in to help people like this.
I have to say the whole process is a complete charade, in the sense that you have these legalistic, very large negotiating meetings where everyone argues over little bits of language, and actually the deals are being done over there, upstairs, behind closed doors by world leaders from the powerful nations, and then they'll convene in a plenary and everyone else will have to accept it. That's if you get a deal at all. So you can sit in these negotiating sessions and actually, you know perfectly well that you're wasting your time.
Has AOSIS and Maldives and those groups putting forward the 350 parts per million and the 1.5, you know...
350 has been gone for days. There's no sign of it in any text I've seen. And it would be impossible to restore it at this point.
Yeah.
1.5 is still in there, but they'll never agree to it. We'll end up with some compromise language like well below 2 degrees. You know, the small countries always lose out. What they're really going to do is bribe them with lots of money. So with Hillary Clinton just announcing that, oh yes, we'll support the 100 billion figure for financing, Gordon Brown's also said this, the EU support. Basically, if they put the money on the table, then they can start to win some of the smaller countries round and break them that way.
So what you're going to see is money on the table, buying out the smaller nations, even though the figures that are being committed to will render most of those countries uninhabitable.
Well, pretty much, but is that better than or worse than no deal at all? You have to make your mind up, don't you?
Right, thank you very much, Mark.
The massive message of this project is that equality is the answer to climate change. One, we wouldn't have got ourselves into this mess if we'd had an equitable process, and secondly, it would be so much easier to get out of this mess if this whole process was equitable. So we're just playing a very, very small part in trying to make this process just that little bit more equitable.
I think when they told us that we were helpful, they said your delegation is a godsend on our blog, which is www.unfairplay.info.
Plug.
Yeah, they said your delegation is a godsend, and that just made me feel, I think after having worked so hard and not really knowing what was coming out of it, it just felt, it was just kind of rushed, just, you know, this is useful, and it was really rewarding.
I think the young people are really the people who should be focusing on this. We won't be here to witness the full impact of the climate change, but they will. And I think they should listen to the debate going on. They should focus on how leaders like ourselves are handling this. Whether badly or nicely, I don't think it's been done very well at the moment. And I think this is a lesson for the young people to see what not to do about the future of the planet.
One of the quotes which has really stuck with me in my last year of climate activism was by Bill Kibben. He said that the story of the last 60 years have been of us raising flags outside the United Nations headquarters as new countries sign up. And the story, if we're not careful, of the next 60 years will be of us lowering those same flags as islands begin to disappear under the water and countries are ravaged by the effects of climate change. And yet here behind me in the UN negotiations, all of the positive news stories and the real pushing forward of these negotiations have come from those self-same people, putting their inspiration, their heart and their soul into what's said in those plenaries.
It's not just our future. We will be the first on the front line, and we will go, but others will follow. And I think that is the message that must be conveyed, that whilst we might be on the front line now, others will follow if nothing is done.